Hi, I'm Jeff Miller.
I'm Anthony Navarro, and welcome to Talk Out Loud, where we share the LGBTQIA+ narrative, one story at a time.
On this episode of Talk Out Loud, our co-host Anthony Navarro shares his story. Anthony is the founder and creative director of Liven It Up Events, a nationwide event production company with offices in Chicago and Los Angeles. He's an author, producer, entrepreneur, talk show host, and speaker. His early years were shaped by time spent in his family's restaurant. There he witnessed the importance of coming together around the table with friends and family. He then had to learn how to navigate life when there was loss and pain so he could continue to live and flourish. He's now using all those skill sets and crafting life experiences for people through various media formats. Let's hear Anthony's story. Hey.
Hi.
How's it feel?
I mean, I haven't been on this side of the table yet, but I'm excited to share and see what comes this conversation.
So this week, Anthony has so lovingly showed up to share his story with us. Anthony, so, a lot of times we start these conversations with just like understanding so we can know like what kind of helped you become who you are today. So let's go back in time a little bit in the time machine and go back to your early childhood.
Okay, Marty McFly.
Put on your seatbelts.
Let's go.
Can you tell us a little bit like what growing up was like for you?
Yeah. So I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and it was a pretty normal childhood, I would say. Pretty typical suburban growing up. I think what was different from myself and a lot of the other people that I knew growing up was I did have a rather large family, lots of aunts and uncles and cousins, and we were all very close, and we did things with our family a lot. I can remember like every Friday night at our house, we would have, my aunt and cousins over for, Friday night pizza night. We'd watch TGIF. And the other thing was my parents were high school sweethearts. And so that meant both sides of the family knew each other for a long time. So there was just a lot of history between my dad's side of the family and my mom's side of the family, and everybody got along.
So like even like just so people can understand, and I didn't realize this for a while, was that your aunts and uncles on both sides of the family, the siblings of your mom and dad, knew each other. Like,
they all went to high school together.
Right.
So everyone sort of, and it was like, tiered and, depending on their age groups, everyone
kind of matched up.
Yeah, right. Kind of got matched up. So like little, groups sort of formed. And, growing up, it was really common for us to be like at my grandma's house at the pool with our cousins and have sleepovers at grandma's house. And, it was pretty normal for us. I guess even like looking at it like today, so like now my cousins are having kids, and there's like a joke where we tell the kids this is your uncle cousin or your auntie cousin because to the babies, because we're all so close that we feel like siblings.
Yeah, and there was also a shared kind of a story with both sides of the family being from Italy, right?
Yeah. So both sides of the family immigrated from Italy. So there was always this, I guess, initial bond between both families. And, a lot of those sort of like Italian family traditions were shared between both sides. Yeah. One of the biggest things was Sunday dinners. So Sunday dinner was a time where the family would all gather, aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents, parents, and we would get together. And it was a way to sort of let go of all of maybe the trouble that you had from the week before and relax and sort of rejuvenate.
Would you like check on like also like as a check-in as well too, no?
Yeah, I mean, yes, it was more of just a place to really relax and laugh.
Okay.
And there wasn't a lot of heavy conversation. It was just more of a place, a safe space to come to really rejuvenate yourself, to get ready for the week ahead. And then, of course, the big thing that was always present was this sort of, this big meal that was prepared. And from a young age, I always saw, coming to my grandma's house on a Sunday or going to my aunt's house on a Sunday for Sunday dinner, it was a really important thing to do, to not only get together with family and, sort of create those bonds and those, foster those relationships, but also the importance of what it means to sit down at the table with your loved ones and to share a meal. There's something that's really sacred about that. And I think about it now, and it's a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about, I don't know, you think about when you watch like a period movie, on maybe like the Middle Ages, something really great happens, in the kingdom. And, the king calls, we must have a feast. And it's this whole idea of what it means when you're celebrating, an accomplishment or celebrating, life.
Milestones or just
like a regular old Sunday.
Right.
The importance of being able to sort of set the table and bring people together around it.
There's also something that, and I'm thinking about as you're talking about this, that is like, you're out there doing your thing, and then you come back to this like safe place or whatever, not necessarily, not that it's unsafe out in the world, but you come back and you report back in, like, how was your week? And as family, like we passed, like you had multi-generations here, and in your grandparent, I know on your mom's side, actually was born in Italy and came over at the age of 8. So there's stories that are told. You find out who you are. You're told about how life works, how life is. And some of that stuff, like I know as I've gotten older, like does not always align with exactly who I am today, but we continue to like uncover and discover like who we are. And so when we've been out in the world, like the world kind of, when you go back out to the world and you know who you are, I think it's this sense of self that's very important to have. At least for me, like I think knowing your family and seeing you guys at these events, it's like you encourage each other, you tell each other like, this is how we are, this is how we treat people, this is who, like these are the principles and values of how we live by. And then you go back out to the world and then you come back and, it just kind of repeats itself.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what it is. It's a unique thing that I know not everybody experiences, but I know just like looking back on those times, there were some really tough times, even as I got older, like as an adult in my career, where I would have a really brutal or hard week, and being able to go to my aunt's house and just sort of let it all out, or not even talking about it, but having a place to just sort of forget about it and letting it go. It just became a sacred tradition that really helped form a lot of who I am today. Wow. So, but, there were other things that happened too, I think that are important from when I was a kid. I think it's really important to talk about my dad's family, the restaurant that they owned. It was a place that my grandparents started before I was even born. And it turned into sort of this multi-generational restaurant and, banquet conference center thing that grew for over 30 years. There was a lot of love, I think, shared in those walls in that room at a very young age. It was interesting to see. So my grandma was sort of the one who was the matriarch of the family, and she really led the charge on curating and crafting, what the restaurant experience was. And I remember I was young. And I was little, and I said to her one time in the kitchen at the restaurant, I said, Nani, why do people come here all the time? Why do people always come back? And, what's the secret? And she just said, well, the secret is that they come back for the food and they come back for the people. And the reason why they come back for the food is because when we're cooking it with love. And the people that are working here, they love being here. So at a young age, I realized the importance of, love or passion. Having that, be present in your work life was really important. But that word love, it's always that lesson that she taught me. It always stands out as such a big life lesson for me, because I feel like if I'm not passionate about something, or I'm not really enjoying something, or I don't love what I'm doing, then don't do it. Because people will see right through the lie. People will see right through sort of this facade that you're putting up, and it's not going to work. And I know that when I've done things in the past, if I wasn't truly passionate about them, they either not that they didn't work, but they weren't as vastly accepted or received by other people.
It's interesting to me because I'm thinking about just everything you just said there, which is really helpful. That love, there's a sense of self and self-awareness of knowing and identifying with your soul, of who you are, to be able to connect with that. So I know for myself where it's been like, oh, like I've had some things where I've been like, oh, okay, whatever. But stuff where it's like really, I'm like, where like it lights a fire. You know that you get that in your chest, like that fire you get for something. And it's just like the passion maybe is what I'm looking for, right?
Yeah.
Accompanying with that love and just kind of like, you just kind of feel your whole body light up at the idea of doing something. And sometimes it's like, well, sometimes it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I'm not sure how to get there, but I know that this feeling I have for this just continue to. We talked about like before, like following those breadcrumbs as well to get there. So you had this identification of like family coming together, sharing a meal. You talk about like how that's like a sacred experience, right? Mm-hmm. And just to be fair, like life was not all like cupcakes and kittens and unicorns either. That you had life stuff like everybody else too. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Life felt pretty normal and safe and easy, probably till I was about 13. Our life was different, I would say, because we had the restaurant. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for some time until my sister and I got a little bit older. And my dad worked nights, 5 nights a week. And he worked on the weekends. So it was really normal for my dad to leave at like 4:00 at night to go to work. And, the restaurant was open until midnight or 1:00 in the morning. So he wasn't getting home until later. So, that was sort of the norm for a really long time. And around like 12 or 13, there was just a noticeable shift of energy in the house between my mom and dad. And we really weren't sure, my sister and I really weren't sure what that was. And we just knew something was off. My dad was not sleeping in the same bedroom as my mom. He was going to work earlier, maybe staying later. There was just a noticeable difference in the air. And we came home from school one day, and my grandma, my mom's mom, was there. And she sat us down and she said, I have to tell you something. Your dad moved out of the house today, and your mom and dad are getting a divorce. And it wasn't like it caught us off guard, but we didn't know that was what was happening. There was no conversation that led up to it. To this day, I'm not exactly sure why that happened. Although we've talked through a lot of these things and we resolved a lot of the issues, I don't think I ever asked why it happened that way or why we had to find out that way. The only way to explain it is that I felt like my whole world literally got turned upside down, like an hourglass, it just like turned, and it was like everything, the bottom was just falling out. I immediately felt this sense of having to take care of the household. And I'm not sure if that was me or if that was projected onto me by another person or by something that I saw or read. But I felt this, like, I have to be a man now. Like, I have to take care of this house.
That's a lot for a 12 or 13-year-old.
Yeah, it really was. I should, before we go any further, I should also say the night that I found out, or the day that we found out that my parents were getting divorced, that night we did have a sit-down conversation with my mom, and she did talk us through it, as much information as she could give us at the time of what was going on between them. So I think, part of it was from that conversation with her, I sort of felt this responsibility to step up to the plate, to sort of take over this place that the dad in the household, this role that the dad in the household would play. So it was a difficult, that was a lot of pressure that was on myself. And over time, because I never talked about it, and feeling this, I developed this feeling of that somehow I'm laughing because to think that I did this. I somehow thought that I was the one responsible for them getting divorced.
Which is, I'm not a psychologist, but you hear that is a common theme with kids that have gone through divorce, that somehow it was their fault.
Yeah.
Now being an adult today, and we say it was a lot for a 13-year-old to go through, is I think to identify that your mom and dad were going through something at that time as well too, right?
Sure.
So it's not like that there's a magic wand when we talk about like all of a sudden you're an adult and you know how to do everything right. And the fact that, the last thing I was going to say is that when I start keeping secrets to myself, or when I start doing this self-talk and it starts to, I can start to tell myself these stories, and they grow, and I feed and I water them, and not always for the better, right?
Nope.
Can you talk about what were some of the things you started to feed yourself in your mind? What are the thoughts that you were telling yourself?
Yeah, I mean, over and over, the thought was that it was my fault, that there was something that I did, that I should have been better, I could have been better. There was always this sort of tension. I think my dad really wanted me to play sports. I'm just not athletic in that way.
You're athletic, but just not necessarily like...
I'm not a soccer player.
Yeah.
I don't want to play basketball or football. It's just not my thing. And I thought maybe like that had something to do with it. I just started sort of making up these, excuses, and it just perpetuated, and it just got worse and worse and worse until one night I really just, I guess I snapped, and I just thought, I can't live anymore. I can't live like this anymore. I can't be here like this anymore. And I attempted to commit suicide, and I was 13 years old. And I was unsuccessful, thankfully, and immediately knew that what I did, or what I was trying to do, that was not the answer. It was like, I can clearly remember trying to do what I did. And I clearly remember having sort of almost this higher power guide me to saying, okay, you did this. This is where you got to. This is not the way. And that we need to fix this. And very openly talked to my mom, and I got help right away, thankfully. And through counseling and through therapy, I was able to work through a lot of those issues. But really, this was also sort of this time of like graduating 8th grade, going into high school. Also, so I went to a very small grade school, or junior high, and then went into sort of a larger high school. And for the first time, I was, having a tough time sort of integrating socially with people. And part of it was I was not myself. I was not authentic to who I was, because I was dealing with this heavy sort of burden over my shoulders. Yeah. So I wasn't presenting myself to, my classmates the way that, I guess I wasn't presenting myself authentically. I was hiding something.
And when I start to do that, then I'm no longer connecting with the people that are supposed to be in my life. Right.
And it was like a slow build in high school. And also, for the first time, I was called a fag in high school. And I was like, what? What? Who? I don't even think that that's true. But that was the perception of who I was to these people. I wasn't even there. Like, my mind wasn't even focused on that, because I was dealing with so much other stuff in my mind that I wasn't even thinking about who I was from in terms of my sexuality. So that was brand new, and which led to me discovering that eating peanut butter and chocolate chip ice cream every day after school to feed the pain was not good. It started my journey in having to have bad eating habits, which I think is so strange, because, growing up, like I talked about earlier, just the importance of sharing a meal was so important in my life, and with, family and with friends. And now all of a sudden I started to struggle with food, the thing that brought everybody together.
But now it was by yourself, though.
It was. So in my counseling and therapy, I had to address that as well, that I needed, help there. And thankfully, I was able to work through those things. And what's really great is it took time. I'm not going to lie. It took a couple of years, but I feel like by my end of sophomore year, junior year of high school, I felt so comfortable in my skin. I found my tribe. I found my people. I found my groove. I found things that I was passionate about, whether it was working in student government or auditioning for the musicals and the plays and the arts department.
It sounds like you go back on track to becoming who you are.
I did. Yeah. I did. So, and thankfully I had that help. I got that help then.
I just want to stop there for a second. So whether it's food, whether it's sex, whether it's drugs, alcohol, the common theme that I've found in my life in being able to have conversations with people like yourself is that we do that act that could be not a bad thing, like eating, sex, even like alcohol within its own, for people that are not addicted to it, where it doesn't become an issue, that we're using those substances, something outside of myself, for ease and comfort, right? And it's not necessarily that I keep going back to it because the pain. And so the way my pathways in my mind work is that something has gotten stuck where I'm in so much pain that I'm not dealing with the actual pain, or if my hand's on the stove and it starts to burn, I know to pull it off. But when it's an actually internal thing, and my hand's still sitting there on the stove, then I'm going to be eating jars of peanut butter at night or Ben and Jerry's by the quart, right? So, what can I just now? And I just would like to know. I think it would be a disservice. What were some of the tools that counselor or therapist gave you with over those couple of years with dealing with those things?
The main thing was talking through the root of the problem. So it really was working out what it was, and what I had to discover was that I was not responsible for anything. I had no responsibility in any of my parents getting divorced, and I said this earlier, and I kind of laughed a little bit that I thought at 13 that I had the power to break up a marriage, which I didn't. And, most people don't. And I think, now looking back as an adult and, looking at those situations, it's really, everyone goes through what they go through in their own, personal relationships, but not having the ability to talk about it, I think, is what hindered it. And with the therapy, that's what really changed. And really what happened was once I discovered that I was not the culprit and that I didn't need to take on this, role of being the head of the household, it was almost like this pressure was lifted from my chest and this relief came off my shoulders. And everything sort of shifted. My personality changed. My smile changed. I remember my mom, we got workout equipment because I wanted to get in shape. I wanted to lose that, 20 or 30 pounds that I had put on. Everything changed once I made the realization. And it wasn't just I should say this, it's not just like this surface level decision. It was, I truly had to understand deep in my heart and my soul that I was not responsible. And once I was able to understand that and accept that, that's when it seemed like everything just sort of came into place.
Yeah. There's when I'm trying to box against a wall that's a dead end, it's insanity. Yeah. Actually is what it is. Yeah. And that is exhausting. Then what I hear is you took that once you realized, or it came to a head, that then you were able then to take that energy and put it back into improving yourself, like living your life, and then that's where the flow started again, and
it flourished. And I think about those times and the things that I did, and I was able to soar. I was just gliding, and it was
going from drowning
really
to
beautiful
flying.
thing.
Yeah. Huh? It's like going from drowning to flying. The word flourish you use. It's a beautiful word.
Yep.
So what happened next?
Well, then graduated high school, went on to college, and it was sort of an unknown time. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do, and there was a big part of me that wanted to go away, far away. I was looking at schools in California. I was looking at schools, Arizona, and I remember settling on a school in Chicago, DePaul University. And I shouldn't say settle, but that's ultimately where I chose to go. And I think part of it was because I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And there was this sort of sense of being close to home that just felt like the right thing to do at the time.
But didn't make sense at the time.
Yeah, not knowing why. And midway through my freshman year of college, my mom was diagnosed with hepatitis C. We found out that there was a blood transfusion that she had had a year or so earlier that was contaminated with it. That was how she contracted it. There was a experimental treatment that she started on, which made her really sick. It was almost like her being on chemo.
Well, it was chemo actually, right?
Yeah. So, but it was done at home, and it just really snowballed over the course of 2.5 years of her just sort of going on this like up and down with it. Ultimately, the treatment put her into kidney and liver failure,
right.
And it was a really weird time because she was sick, but her and I spent a lot of time together while she was sick. There was a lot of conversations. So she never wanted me, her being as sick as she was, she still wanted me to not live in the house. She wanted me to have my own apartment or my own place to live in outside of the house because she wanted me to experience college and have a college life and a college experience. But really what wound up happening was I was going to school full time. I had to get a job because I was helping supplement paying bills for her because she wasn't able to, pay everything at the house. And then I had an apartment that I had to pay for. So it was like kind of like it really didn't work the way that she wanted it to. But what it did do was I wasn't in the house all the time. But I clearly remember on Saturday mornings, her and I every Saturday morning, because I would go home on Fridays, and Saturday mornings we'd wake up and her and I would just sit at the kitchen table and have coffee and talk. And when I say talk, we would just talk about everything. She would tell me things, share these things that happened to her when she was younger. She would talk about our families, like both sides, my mom and dad's side, because again, there's this big history there. So I learned a lot, and we just talked. We talked a lot. We got to know each other on a different level, and it was a time that at the time I didn't know what was happening, but now looking back, it was us really having sort of our final moments of sharing with one another together.
Little backstory is that your mom at the age of 19 had a kidney transplant, right?
Yeah.
She was told at the age of 19 that she would never have children.
Right.
And she went on to have not one, but 2 beautiful children.
We're overachievers in my family.
and so due to the complications from with the hepatitis, with also being having a transplant, the chemotherapy caused extra stress on her internal organs, and she got really sick that year, right?
Yeah, so she got really sick my senior year of college. We made it through the holidays. It was not great. Her birthday was the first week of January. And I remember going home for her birthday on her birthday during the week. And then she was supposed to, she was like at the top of the transplant list because of how sick she was. They had to do a series of tests. When you're getting a transplant, you have to make sure that your heart, for her, she had to do a series of heart tests to make sure that her heart could handle the stress of the surgery. And we brought her into the hospital to have that test, and they admitted her that night because her heart was not functioning right. So there was just all of a sudden, like, things was weird. It was like things just sort of like turned very drastically, very quickly.
And this was, just to clarify, this was because the original transplant that she had now was failing her,
right? Yeah,
many years later.
Yeah, so the kidney that was in her body at the time was not working. She was on dialysis again. she was going to get a kidney transplant. Yes, that's right. So we were there, and she was in the hospital, and we were just doing everything we could to really, kind of keep up, her spirits, our spirits. And I was there with her one night, and she just was not feeling great. And, I called the nurse, and the nurse came in, and they realized that something was going on. And all of a sudden it felt like an episode of, any medical show. At the time, ER was on TV, and I felt like we were on an episode of ER with all these doctors rushing around in there. And they were making her sign all this paperwork, and she asked everybody to get out because she needed to talk to me. And we talked about a couple of things. She told me a few things. And the last thing she said to me was sort of this mantra, I guess, that we adopted from her cousin while she was sick. She said to me, she said, just remember that you have to have faith, because faith gives you hope, and hope gives you everything to live for. And as soon as she said that, it was like the doctors rushed back into the room, and they pulled me out, and they had to intubate her. They put her on a ventilator because she wasn't able to, she was losing the ability to breathe, and they had to medicate her and, do all of these things. So we were not that happened on a Thursday. And then the next couple of days, no one was really supposed to be there because she had to go into an intensive care unit. And I don't even think I really understood what was going on at the time. So I remember us going back, as a clan, we showed up, the family showed up on Sunday that week. And she was connected to all kinds of machines, and there were tubes, coming in and out of her nose and her arms and just everywhere. And I walked into the room, and I lost it. And I just screamed out loud, just let her go. There was no quality of life. You're looking at this person, there's no quality of life there. And really knowing and understanding that she was just too weak to have a transplant. There was no way that was gonna happen. So stubborn as she was, or as strong-minded as she was, she kept going. She kept getting better. So it was just a very weird, couple of weeks of her basically on life support. And then one day I got a call that said, you've got to come we have to go to the hospital. She just took a big turn for the worse. And I remember walking into this, ICU room, and around her bed, it was like a semicircle of doctors and nurses, probably 10 or 12 people. And they were all crying. And I looked, and I came in, and they were just looking at her, just crying, because I don't think these were all of her doctors and nurses, all the specialists, all of the people who she'd been coming to see for so long. They didn't think that she was not going to make it. It wasn't a thing. So, we made the decision that day that she wasn't going to get any better, and that we slowly had to turn the machines off and let her go. And it was a humbling and peaceful experience just to watch her go. I think anybody who has lost a parent, it doesn't matter how old you are. If you're close to them, it's probably one of the toughest things that you can do or go through. And I know for me, because my mom and I were so close, that not having her around anymore, it felt like my whole world was ending. And part of that was because my life revolved around taking her to the doctor, checking on her. I remember the day of the funeral at the luncheon, there were thousands, and I'm not kidding, thousands of people that showed up to the wake. And I know this because we had ordered 1,500 mass cards for the wake. And the wake was from like 3:00 in the afternoon till 9:00 at night. And by 6:00, all 1,500 mass cards were gone. And there was a line of people waiting to get into the funeral home. But I was going back, I was at just meeting, there were a lot of people, there was a lot happening. There was, I don't even remember it. It was so much of a blur. But I remember at the luncheon, I was at her luncheon. We just left her at the cemetery, and it was like mechanical, robotic. I called her to check on her.
You stepped away from the
I left the luncheon and I went to just call her to just make sure that she was okay. Because I would call her 50 times a day just to make sure she was okay at home. And it was her on the answering machine.
Was there anyone there to see when that happened?
No one was there.
Yeah.
So I had to sort of figure out, well, where do I go from here?
Who do I call? Yeah. Was there someone, did you identify inside you, like, who's the person I'm going to call now? Who's the person may not know?
My dad's mom and we just had this spiritual connection, I guess. We would be able to talk about life and all sorts of, philosophical, things. Just, we would have these very deep conversations. I mean, my grandma, she's also the one who was like, the founder of the restaurant and then led to like opening up other businesses. And, she was always this entrepreneur way ahead of her time, sort of this, powerful, woman figure that I've always seen. And it just naturally gravitated to her and I, talking more and more and doing things more and more, spending time together. And I just remember even having like late night conversations with her at her house, she was talking about The Secret before The Secret was even a thing. When I was going through things, she would always just tell me that when you're feeling stressed or you're not sure how to handle something, take a pause and just say, God, take this from me. I'm not strong enough to handle it, and give it back to me when I can handle it. And it was just like these little things where I was learning sort of these building block lessons from her after sort of this tragic sort of experience in my life. And it was a time where I was really able to sort of get regrounded and get to a place where I would be ready to sort of re-enter into the world, like ready to go.
So you finished college.
Mm-hmm.
Was there, did you have an idea like, well, what am I going to do now?
I had no idea what I was going to do. I don't even know what I'm going to do now. So, but yeah, I mean, so I like graduated college, and I always knew there was always this, and I should say this, that those talks with my grandma, those building block moments, that was all happening after college, with her. And, and it wasn't just her. There were other people that started coming in that were really giving me sort of the tools that I would need, further as I, get older, and what I would need later in life. And I always knew that I wanted to be my own boss. I mean, it's sort of hard not to, I grew up in a family watching all of them, working and being their own boss. And there was just sort of this innate feeling that that's what I wanted. And I remember I tried all kinds of things. I tried, different direct sale, like working for different direct sales companies. I early on thought maybe I should get into real estate or be a realtor, but I was kind of young and I didn't have a network, so just trying to navigate these, different things. But what I was doing was I was working in the hospitality industry, and I found this niche on the event side, planning events. So I worked in hotels and restaurants and eventually into off-premise catering. And it led to me saying, okay, well, I have this tool. I know how to create events from one side of it. What if I really started exploring and seeing what it would mean to take and handle and craft events from start to finish, with a lot of time and there was a lot of like self reflection. I journaled a lot. I would go on long walks trying to figure out what it is that I wanted to start. And there was this concept to create a party planning business that would liven it up every party that we would do. So with about a year's worth of this journaling and thinking things through, I launched Liven It Up events, which became my everything. It was sort of a lot of dreams coming true. There was a lot of, I would see a lot of like serendipitous moments as I was building the company. And when I first started, it was just me. And I was really just wanted to plan fun house parties for people to, liven it up. And after my first year really in business was during the time of the 2008 recession happened. So a lot of this like social business and corporate business that I built went away. It just wasn't going to happen anymore. And I had done weddings, working in hotels and catering and all of that. And it's not that I wanted to not do weddings. It just really wasn't on the radar for me to do because I loved doing these, fun house parties and, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, and you're a little humble here, but you just kind of threw out that you were doing some of these social and these corporate things, but you were doing some of the most prestigious locations in downtown Chicago on Oak Street and in the Gold Coast. And you were how old?
26, 27.
Yeah. So, I mean, you hit the ground running and you really took off pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And then 2008 happens.
And everything kind of fell apart. Yeah. So there was this sense of all of a sudden like, well, what is still happening? And people were referring me to help plan weddings because I was a party planner. I remember I had a few weddings lined up for, that year. Not a ton, but enough to keep me busy. And I had a couple, side hustles going too, just to, keep the lights on and food, right. All that kind of stuff. And I remember being at one of the weddings, and I think it was like the first dance, or like the dance floor opened, and I think this energy of the lights changing, right? So it's normally all of a sudden that's when the lights go down, and then this energy kind of hitting from my the back of my head from the music, and it was this big voice inside my head that said, "You need to plan weddings. This is what you need to focus on." And
had you discounted that before at all, just out of curiosity?
No. So whenever a big voice, like it doesn't happen often, but when a big voice like that comes and it tells me, I always follow it. Okay. So from there, I was like, okay, well, we're going to do weddings now. So
had weddings been on your horizon at all?
Yeah, kind of, okay. But not. I wasn't pursuing it. So that's when I really went in and started changing all of our marketing, changed the look of the website to feel more wedding, and the phone started ringing. And I eventually got busier than I could handle by myself, and slowly started bringing on other people to take on other clients. And
you started teaching or assisting a team, no?
Started building a team.
Yeah.
More people, so that it wasn't just me. And I remember when I started, there was never a thought of having anybody else but me. It was just me. It could have been called Anthony Navarro Events, but that's not what it was. It was meant to be this bigger extension of the work that I started to do, and bringing other people on.
So you started to scale that company to what it is more today,
right?
A company that has done over 800 events.
Yeah.
Not just now in the city of Chicago, a nationwide company.
Yep.
With offices in Los Angeles and here in Chicago, and then nationwide. You anywhere. You
travel everywhere. We do stuff everywhere. And we do everything now, from weddings to corporate to social events. And it's been a journey. I've learned a lot in building a company and running it, managing a team, and working with clients. Sometimes it's easy. Sometimes it's more challenging. Sometimes the outside influences have made things difficult. I know everybody always wants to hear all the crazy stories from planning weddings. And, I think that there's a lot of them. But I think what's really important is, or more important is, sort of understanding and knowing why some of those things happen. Sometimes is it, did I not think this through all the way? Did I not double check to make sure that the streets were going to be open, or that there should be like there was a roadblock that day or a festival happening? And other times, you think about, okay, well, why is this person reacting, the way that they're reacting? Why is it such a big deal that the shade of ivory of the roses is the wrong shade of ivory? And then you really just start to wonder, like, okay, well, what's really going on? Because it's not really the shade of ivory is bothering you. There's something else. So I think I learned a long time ago that you can't take everything for surface value, and that you really have to, if you're working with people, you just have to know and understand, like, they got shit going on too.
And I just want to stop for a second. When you said that shade of ivory is that, because I think they could come across as two different ways, as being like, it is the wrong shade of ivory, where actually, and I know this because you planned our wedding, so I got to be kind of like the client for lack of, and for the better. Well, I mean, yeah, right.
You were the client. Yeah,
it was an interesting juxtaposition, and it was a wonderful experience because I trusted you, and leading up to that experience, I had time to watch how sometimes I can focus on one thing, like I can get laser focus on one thing, and you have the way your mind works. You're able to see how it all comes together. You talked about earlier how in the beginning, after college, that you were like doing these side hustle jobs where you were one part of the equation, one of the vendors, whether it was the catering or this or that, and as you observed. And I'm sure this was happening also as a kid, with the banquets and everything, just sitting on the sidelines, or actually, you don't need to just sit on it. You worked in the restaurant as a kid as well too, understanding all these moving and working parts, how almost kind of like in an orchestra, like the conductor is bringing it all together. So why I'm saying all this is that rose was not the wrong color. It was all taken into account. So it all gave birth to, or delivered this one beautiful experience, all working together.
Right.
And that's a gift. I don't necessarily, I have other creative gifts. I don't always necessarily see, I can build things, but the way you do it is definitely the way you plan ahead of things is a little bit of a different intuitive power that you have, that there's a gift that is, and I think that's why it's so important, is finding out what your gifts are. So then you are being able to flourish and use those gifts in life. So the wedding planner gets engaged.
He did.
When I asked you to marry me, I never thought about this till just now. Was this instant feel? I mean, you must have had this instant feel like, oh, okay, so this is. I mean, you said yes, so that was great.
Oh, right? Yeah, I wanted to get married.
But then was there this impending fact of like, oh wait, who's going to plan this wedding?
No, because I didn't think we were going to have a wedding. I thought I had it all planned out in my head.
Exit stage left.
We were going to elope on a mountain in Los Angeles, and it was going to be great. And we were just going to come back to our family and say, surprise.
So you thought you had this all figured out already?
Oh yeah, totally. I think part of it was, at a young age when I came out, which really was not a big deal. My uncle is gay, and I think having him being in our family really helped pave the way for making my coming out process really easy. But at a young age, I began to accept who I was, and also accepted the fact that gay people weren't allowed to get married then. So I was okay with not being married, or I guess maybe not okay with not being married, but not having a wedding. The thought of having a wedding was I think, it was what I did for work. So I didn't want to I never wanted our wedding to feel like it was work. So I think that there was a big part of me that was just like, I don't think we need to have a wedding. And, honestly, the other part was I was sort of afraid that it would be too hard on myself emotionally to have a wedding without my mom there. And
was there something, just to ask you this, was Was it you've produced, you've created so many beautiful, wonderful weddings with love, and you've become like an extended family member of a lot of these families I've seen over the years. That still today, that you're like a third son to some of these people. There's a part of a wedding where there's a really intimate moment between a mom and a son usually.
Oh yeah, the mother-son dances. Yeah, I remember when I really first started doing weddings, when it would happen where. When that would happen, I would have to leave the room because it was too emotional for me. But I was also, at that time, I was also very emotional because I felt very connected to every single, little detail that was happening. And as, my career progressed, I feel like I was able to sort of, like you said, become more of the conductor and make sure that everything was working and not hone in on, little things. Also, I think, as I got older, I dealt with some, emotional, some, things that were sort of deep seated in me. So that part got easier. But yeah, I was kind of nervous about that. But I know that, with a couple different things, with just a few years ago, not being able to be married, or not legally being able to get married, and also really wanting to sort of go back to, I keep going back to it, but what I learned as a kid, bringing people together. There's something really powerful about bringing, all of your friends and family together to celebrate love. So we went on this journey of, planning the wedding. And I think everything that we did was really intentional. I think for me, what was sort of fun was you were my only client. And
What was one of your easiest clients?
And you were the only one that I had to pitch my ideas to. And I think most of the time we were like on the same page. So that sort of was a fun, creative outlet for myself.
In this creative outlet, we were engaged. We decided to have the wedding. How long after we got engaged?
Well, 4 months. You decided that, not me.
So if it was me, it would have.
Yeah, that was all on you. I would have given us way more time, but it definitely worked. And, I approached it from the same way that I would approach any event. What started happening was, in the process, I realized what exactly was happening. And what was happening was that we were bringing together your family, my family, your friends, my friends, and we were bringing them all under, into one room for one night to celebrate what I always thought was the love between two people. And what I realized in the planning process was that it really was actually, we were bringing people together to not only celebrate us, but to celebrate them. And what I mean by that was a way for us to say thank you for being a friend, being there through the years, giving me guidance, giving your advice, having a shoulder to cry on, helping build me to be the best version of myself so that I could be ready for my partner in life.
And it wasn't just you and me. It was, we were who we are because of all of we. Like
all of we.
Yeah.
The whole group. So everyone who was invited, there was intention behind everyone was invited. We were limited too because of space. The venue only held so many people. So everyone who was invited, there really was a purpose for that person, to be in the room that night. And once that happened, I realized that for all of these years, I've just been planning weddings and doing this for so many people. And I realized that there was a bigger potential when you're rounding up people from all walks of life, bringing them all under one roof. And the thing that I learned was, if you can take anything that you're doing, any kind of gathering, where if you shift the focus, even if you're giving the excuse, right? So that there's this monumental, life-changing moment that you're bringing people together. If you can flip the intention of why you're bringing everyone together, and it becomes not just celebrating you're having a baby, you have a birthday, it's an anniversary, but you but you shift the focus to saying, everybody in the room, I want to say thank you to you for helping me get to this point in my life. The amount of love and the amount of joy that it brings you to be able to put that gathering on for those people who you love so much just is, it's almost bigger than you and the other people that are coming.
Right. Well, we talked about earlier about as a kid on Sundays, how you would gather around and everyone would kind of check in with each other. And, and when you get to have that wedding, that's maybe like once every 5 years when everyone gets together, or once in a lifetime, let's even say, because when are all of those people from my life and your life all going to be together per se, like, and that one time like that? But then we're all sitting down together and everyone is getting to check in with one another. It's not just about what's happening in our life that minute.
Right.
It's about what's happened over the years with Aunt so-and-so, with this person. And your cousin's had a baby now that you haven't seen in years. Maybe when you were younger, you should see each other all at Thanksgiving, but now that they've had their own family and they do their thing. And so to get everyone, at least that was my experience, all this extended family together. And then for them to have stories with each other, like my family, having like my dad telling me stories about, you and your uncle, and they had their own, and your dad taking my cousins out to the bar till 4:00 in the morning after the wedding, and then getting hot dogs, here in Chicago. So, yeah.
What we did was, and I didn't know that this is what was happening, but what we were doing was we were setting a stage for the people that we love most in our lives to come together, to connect with one another, to start these new, create new bonds, create new relationships. I mean, we just didn't have the wedding. I mean, we had the wedding on one night, but we also, I don't know why we did this. We didn't really have a rehearsal, but we decided to sort of have like a rehearsal dinner or like a welcome party, but we invited everybody. And I just remember going outside and seeing some of my friends, some of your friends, your cousins, Mike, everybody was just sitting around drinking beers, talking, and like they were laughing. They were joking around with each other.
That gravitated to each other were the people. Yeah,
right.
They were making their own bonds.
They were, and it was all we did was we just sort of set the stage and we brought everybody together, and we took the focus off the two of us and we put it back on everyone else and said that this is just not about us.
So much more powerful.
All of you.
Right. Missed opportunities if we hadn't done that, honestly.
Yeah, totally. I mean, later on that Sunday, so the wedding was Saturday night, then Sunday morning, we had everybody back over at our house for brunch, and
brunch went till
8 o'clock at night.
I think it went till 10 o'clock at night, but it just kept,
which in all honesty, I wouldn't have had it any other way.
And the thing is that for anyone people had come from all over the country, and some people from just down the street as well too. And knowing that, so-and-so was going to be getting on a flight at 8 o'clock, and they stayed up until 6 o'clock till they had to head to, Midway or O'Hare, feeling that every ounce of potential was fully appreciated.
Yeah. I mean, and, looking back now, like there were people at the wedding that are not here with us anymore. Yeah. And being able to have those experiences with them and them having the experience with all of the other people who were here, I think is, it's just a beautiful thing.
Yeah. So now you've done your own wedding. Obviously your perspective has a different dimension to it that it didn't necessarily have, because you never had actually done one where it was all, you've planned you've done family members' weddings, but now this was your wedding.
Yeah.
How has that experience changed or created a new layer to how you work today?
Yeah, I think it's just a different lens. And my approach is just a little bit different with every project I take on, whether it's a wedding or a corporate event, like an activation, a meeting, a conference. It's finding out what the intention is from the get-go. Why are we getting everyone together? Why are we asking people to come? And then figuring out what are we going to do to elevate and enhance the guest experience. It really comes down to creating a memorable experience, not just for who's hosting, but for the people who are going to be attending.
When you leave that experience, how have you been changed?
Right. And really just looking at it at a different, approaching it from a different angle. And I think what has happened is because of that, these interesting projects, pop up in my email, in my email box, where I feel like that that other people who are maybe just sort of drawn to this energy that I'm putting out, whether they're finding it on social media or, whatever, but sort of the right projects that are looking to do that just sort of come into play. For me on a personal level too, there's sort of a deeper meaning behind having people over or gathering. We were back in your hometown, South Bend, Indiana, at church last year, I think around this time. And the conversation in church was asking everybody, finding what was their altar at home? What altar did they create? What was sort of this sacred space that they were able to create in their homes? And I had to think about it because I didn't have it, right at the top of my head. But eventually it came to me that the dining room table was almost like my altar. So, meaning I would put a lot of love and care and attention into setting it up
to receive people
with food and with floral and decor and the angle of the plates and the angle of the napkins and all these little details. But what it did is it facilitated and brings people together where they come into your house and they're there and they're having conversations with another.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about it, you said go ahead.
Yeah, it's the anchor of the gathering. So it's not. What I've really learned, though, is that it's not so important of what every little detail is on the table, but that it's there and it becomes this anchor for everyone to gather around.
So I picture you and your mom, on those Saturday mornings, and then also at conversations with your grandma, how important it is that we as human beings continue to talk about where we're at, where we're going, and then also sharing with those around us is how we're doing it and how we're getting there and what's working, what's not working. When 2 or 3 people come together, there's 2 or 3 different. There's so much I don't know, right? And then there's things that I uniquely have experienced that people that love and care about me can be like, they know. First of all, they know who I am and what I'm about. And first of all, I have to figure that out for myself. And people, the people that celebrate me can be like, this is not who you, if I start going in the wrong direction, not necessarily the wrong direction, but maybe off the path or whatever, be like, that's not you. This is not who you are. I know you. This is, maybe I've been distracted or maybe I'm tired. Maybe I've been maybe I've been doing too much. What I've seen is this overarching theme of how people have been in your life to help you continue to find out who you are, who you're becoming, and then you go back out and you do your thing. Is there any other tools that you use like in your spiritual practice that we maybe haven't touched on today that you think would be important for other people to know and how you get through who you are today?
Yeah. So every morning, I take a little time out before I get out of bed. And, some people may call it a prayer. Some people would call it a meditation. It's just sort of my morning practice. And what I do is I take a couple deep breaths. I get sort of centered. And the first thing I do is I visualize sort of what I see for myself for that day and maybe some bigger picture, ideas. And then what I really work through is sort of this gratitude list of talking and working through all of the things that I am grateful for. And it could be, some days it's, really simple. I'm grateful for the dogs. I'm grateful for a roof over our heads, and I'm grateful for you. And other days it's big, it's bigger things or it's specific things that have maybe happened the day before or are going to happen that day. So, but I think that there's something powerful about calling out or writing down or saying out loud the things that you are grateful for. Gratitude, I've learned a long time ago that when you're grateful and you give thanks for those things that have been brought into your life, sometimes good, sometimes not so good, but when you're grateful for those things, somehow it sort of shifts your mindset and you walk into your day totally different and you approach it differently, maybe more from a positive mindset. But having that sort of be the way to start the day it's just very simple and very easy way for me to wake up and, get out of bed on the right foot. I also know too, on the days that I don't do that, I also notice that things don't always go as great. And I should say that, just because I do this gratitude journal every morning, that doesn't mean that there's no problems during the day. It's really more of the mindset that I'm in, that I approach handling issues or problems, right?
It's interesting when I think it's not getting stuck.
Mm-hmm.
We have emotions, but we talked about younger when you things got really bad, it was like those emotions got stuck.
Yeah.
And being able to emote, to move, and just to continue to as we life is like bumper cars. We're out, when you're out there living your life, and especially when you're out there really living.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're all constantly in collision. But if I'm okay on the inside, if I've had that quiet time, then I kind of rise above it in a different way. It's like, okay, what? And I know even like for myself, there's been times where like something's happened, and maybe you've not known it, like I've gone and meditated earlier that day or something where I've really had a chance. And from the outside, I look no different than I did the day before. And you've come to me with something, and you're kind of like bracing for impact. And I'm like, oh, okay. All right. And I know, and I've seen, and I've been both the person who has and who has not, where you're going to look at me like, okay. And I'm like, yeah, okay. That's just my personal experience with that. So I really appreciate the time that you took here and being able to share just your story with us. I feel like that we all have a better understanding of who you are and who you are becoming, and just some of the things that I know that I can take away that can help me today that I didn't even know was being married to you. So,
well, I'm glad for that.
Yeah. So, well, just want to say happy Thanksgiving to everyone, and just have a lot of gratitude for being able to share this space with you today.
Yep, me too.
We hope you enjoyed getting to know Anthony and learn more about where his source for life, drive, and passion come from. His books, events, and media links can be found on our website under his episode's profile page.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Talk Out Loud. If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe, rate us, and share with a friend. You can also follow us on social media at Talk Out Loud Live. If you or someone you know has an inspirational story and a member of the LGBTQIA+ community, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to us on our website at www.talkoutloudlive.com. You can also get your official Talk Out Loud gear in our online store. Thanks again for listening, and remember to be true, be you, and to talk out loud.